Chapter 1. The Arrival. The evening started like any other. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the skyline, casting a soft orange glow across the glass buildings that dotted the horizon. I was alone in my apartment, sitting in front of my aging TV, lazily flicking through the channels with a remote that had seen better days. The hum of the refrigerator in the corner and the distant noise of traffic outside were the only sounds accompanying me in my little urban sanctuary. It had been a long, tiresome week at work, and all I wanted was to unwind. A quick dinner microwave pasta with far too much sauce, and I was set for the night. I had no grand plans or expectations, no excitement in my life, and that was exactly how I liked it. I had grown accustomed to the quiet monotony of my days. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. I didn't need anything more than that. At least, that's what I had convinced myself. As I sat there, the clock ticking away in the background, the sound of my own quiet breathing the only other thing filling the room, a sudden vibration ran through the floor beneath my feet. At first, I thought it was just the building settling. It wasn't unusual for older apartments to make strange noises, creaks, and groans as the structure adjusted to the wind or temperature shifts. But then the vibrations grew more pronounced, as if someone had dropped a heavy object on the floor above. A low rumble echoed through the walls, the windows rattling ever so slightly, and a strange hum filled the air, an unnerving sound that resonated deep within my chest. I stood up, frowning, trying to pinpoint the source of the disturbance. The sound wasn't coming from anywhere specific, it just seemed to be all around me, as though the very atmosphere was shifting. I crossed the room and walked to the window, pulling aside the curtain to peek out at the city below. The lights of the streets stretched out into the distance, each car that passed by leaving behind a faint trail of light in the darkening sky. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The hum continued, steady and low, vibrating against my ribcage. I felt the air grow thick, almost heavy, as though it were charged with something strange, something unfamiliar. It was in that moment that I noticed it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. There, just above the skyline, hovering in the sky, was a shape that didn't belong. I squinted, heart hammering in my chest, trying to focus on it through the mist of confusion and disbelief. The object was large, far too large to be any kind of aircraft I had ever seen. It wasn't a helicopter or a plane. Its shape was nothing like anything from Earth. It was sleek and dark, with an eerie, organic quality that made my skin crawl. There were no sharp edges, no clear lines or angles. It seemed to ripple and move, almost as if it were alive, its surface shifting in strange ways. Long tendrils of what looked like energy or organic material extended from its sides, pulsating with an unnatural rhythm. A shudder ran through my body as the truth of the situation settled over me like a heavy fog. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't some elaborate hoax or malfunction in the system. The thing hovering above the city above my apartment was not from Earth. It was alien. I had read the conspiracy theories, seen the rumors circulating on the internet, but nothing had prepared me for this moment. I tried to move, but my body felt like it had turned to stone. My thoughts scattered in every direction as my eyes stayed locked on the strange craft above me. It hovered without any visible means of propulsion, completely still in the sky. For a moment, I felt the urge to duck, to run, to hide, my instincts screaming that this was wrong, that I was in danger. But my feet refused to move. I could feel a weight on my chest, a feeling of dread that took root deep inside my stomach, a gnawing sense that whatever was happening, whatever was about to unfold, was beyond anything I had ever imagined. The hum grew louder, more insistent, vibrating through the windows and into my bones. It felt as if it were coming from the craft itself, filling the air with an energy I couldn't understand. It was both alien and strangely comforting, like the sound of something ancient stirring from a long slumber. My breathing became shallow, uneven, and I took a step back from the window, fear rushing through me. What were they doing? Why had they come? Was this an invasion? A mistake? Before I could process my thoughts, the sound of a soft knock on the door broke through the chaos in my mind. My heart jumped in my chest, and I froze, my hand on the doorknob, not sure if I was ready to face whatever awaited me. Another knock came, more insistent this time. It was loud, like the sound of someone who needed to be let in. My pulse quickened, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what was happening. I moved to the door cautiously, my hand shaking as I reached for the knob. I hesitated for a moment, considering running or hiding. But there was no way out. No way to escape the unknown that was unfolding before me. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't pretend that everything was normal anymore. I opened the door, and there they were. Two figures, tall and impossibly graceful, standing in the doorway. They were dressed in sleek, dark clothing that shimmered slightly, as if the fabric was alive, shifting with their movements. The first figure, the one closest to me, had an air of authority about her. Her sharp features, elongated limbs, and glowing eyes all spoke of someone who was not of this world. She was beautiful in a way that felt otherworldly, her skin pale but glowing faintly in the dim light of my apartment hallway. Her sister, standing just behind her, was similar but not quite the same. Where the first alien's features were sharp and commanding, the second had a softer, more enigmatic presence. Her eyes were large and dark, as though they were absorbing everything in the room. Her smile was almost imperceptible, like a secret that she wasn't quite ready to share. I stood there, speechless, staring at them. I couldn't believe my eyes. They were real. They were here, in my apartment. I didn't know what to say, what to do. Everything in me screamed to close the door, to shut out the impossible reality of the moment. But I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot. "Are you Augustus?" The first sister spoke, her voice like velvet, yet carrying an unmistakable authority. The question was direct, as though she already knew the answer. I nodded, the only thing I could do in that moment. "Yes, I am." The second sister stepped forward slightly, her movements fluid and graceful. She seemed to study me for a moment, as if weighing the gravity of the situation. "We have been looking for you," she said softly, her voice carrying a sense of finality. "And now that we have found you, your fate is sealed." Before I could respond, before I could even begin to process the words, the first sister raised a hand, gesturing toward the window, where the ship still hovered in the sky, its presence now impossibly close. "We have come to bring you with us," she said, her tone calm, yet unmistakably commanding. "You will come with us now, Augustus. You have no choice." The weight of her words sank in, my heart hammering in my chest as my mind raced to catch up with the reality of the situation. What did they want with me? What had I done to deserve this? Why had they come to me, of all people? And, most importantly, how was my fate sealed? I opened my mouth to speak, to protest, but no words came out. The second sister took a step closer, her dark eyes never leaving mine. "It is time for you to understand," she said, her voice carrying a strange kind of comfort that felt out of place. "You have been chosen. You will learn what that means soon enough. But for now, you will come with us." I didn't know what was happening, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever my life had been before this moment, it was over. My future, whatever it might look like, had been irrevocably altered. My fate had been sealed the moment those two alien sisters stepped into my apartment. And there was no going back. Chapter 2. The journey begins. I had no time to think, no time to question or reason with myself. I was beyond the point of no return, my feet already moving toward the door as the two sisters silently guided me outside. The air felt different now, colder somehow, as if the entire world had shifted when they arrived. The city around me looked unchanged, yet everything felt wrong, like I was no longer connected to it in any meaningful way. The streets I had walked for years suddenly felt unfamiliar, as if they were part of a life I no longer belonged to. The ship that had hovered above my apartment now seemed even more massive as we approached it. Its tendrils, those strange organic-like appendages, were now fully visible, undulating in the air as if responding to some unseen force. The sisters moved effortlessly toward the craft, and I followed, my feet moving as if controlled by some unseen hand. There was no choice but to go. The sisters had made it clear that my future was already decided, and all I could do was walk into the unknown. As we entered the ship, the air shifted. It was colder inside, but the walls of the craft were alive, pulsing with a soft, ethereal glow that seemed to fill every corner of the room. There were no buttons, no switches, no visible controls, only smooth, curved surfaces that hummed with energy. The floor beneath me was soft, almost as if it were made from some organic material. The walls stretched upward, far taller than any normal ship, the room expanding as if to accommodate the weight of the moment. My eyes darted around, taking in the strange, alien beauty of the ship, but it was all too much. I couldn't make sense of it. The first sister turned to me as we walked deeper into the ship. "You must prepare yourself, Augustus," she said, her voice calm but insistent. "The path ahead is one that will change everything. What you know now will be gone, replaced with knowledge you cannot yet comprehend. This ship will take you to the stars, to places beyond your wildest dreams. But be warned, nothing will ever be the same." Her words were heavy, and despite the uncertainty in my chest, I couldn't bring myself to say anything in response. I was too overwhelmed, too lost in the moment. The reality of what was happening, what was unfolding around me, felt so far beyond anything I had ever imagined. I had never asked for this, never wanted to be part of something so grand, so cosmic. But here I was, a player in a game much bigger than I could have ever anticipated. The sisters led me to a large chamber, the walls lined with strange symbols that pulsed with light as we entered. The room was empty, save for a large central platform that seemed to float above the floor, glowing with an otherworldly light. The second sister gestured for me to step onto it. "This is where your journey begins, Augustus," she said softly. "Step forward, and you will begin to understand why your fate was sealed the moment we found you." Without thinking, I stepped forward, the platform's light growing brighter as I stood on it. The room around me seemed to blur, and I could feel the ship's energy shifting, swirling around me like a storm. And then, as if something deep within the ship had awakened, the world around me tilted, and I was pulled forward into the unknown. In that moment, as the platform hummed to life beneath my feet, I realized that my life had just become something unrecognizable. The sisters had come for me. They had sealed my fate. And the future that awaited me was a journey I could not have possibly prepared for. The stars would be my path, and I had no choice but to follow. The platform under my feet hummed with an energy that resonated in my chest, and suddenly, the ship around me seemed to shift, becoming more alive. The walls seemed to breathe, undulating as if they were responding to my presence. The soft, organic glow that emanated from every surface felt like a pulse, like the ship was somehow aware of my every move, every thought. The feeling was disorienting, like being in a place where the very air was not meant for a human to breathe. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening, but there was no time to think. I could feel the atmosphere around me begin to change, and before I could ask another question, the second sister's voice cut through my confusion. "You'll need to understand, Augustus," she said, her tone still gentle but firm, as if trying to prepare me for something I couldn't possibly be ready for. "The Nazarath has always chosen its path, and now it has chosen you. This ship is not just a vessel, it is a key, a conduit to something far greater than you could ever imagine." Her words were heavy, each syllable pregnant with meaning, but I could barely grasp them. How could I possibly be the one to inherit this? I was just an ordinary guy with no knowledge of alien worlds, let alone the inner workings of a legendary ship. The weight of her words didn't hit me immediately, not until the room shifted again. I glanced over at the first sister, who had been silent up until this point, but her presence was commanding. Her gaze locked onto mine, and for the first time, I felt an unspoken understanding pass between us. "You don't have a choice in this, Augustus," she said, her voice calm, almost soothing, yet tinged with something ancient. "But that doesn't mean you're unprepared. Everything that has happened to you, everything that has led you here, is a part of the greater plan. You've been chosen for a reason, and now, we need you to fulfill your role." My mind spun in circles, trying to keep up with the constant influx of information. I had only been in the presence of these two beings for what felt like mere moments, yet already my entire world was upside down. The stars themselves seemed to beckon to me, the Nazarath offering a glimpse of the unknown, the uncharted path I was now about to walk. But before I could process any of it, the ship began to move. The floor beneath my feet vibrated, and the walls seemed to stretch and twist, their surface now shifting like liquid, growing more fluid and malleable with every passing second. It was like being inside the mind of a living creature, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this ship, this vessel, was far more than a mere mode of transportation. "We're leaving Earth now," the first sister spoke, her voice cutting through the hum of the ship as it slowly ascended, the sound of engines shifting beneath us. "You have to let go of everything you know. This is your new reality now." I had barely processed what she said when the gravity of the moment hit me all at once. The walls around me seemed to blur, and suddenly, the view outside the windows, the city, the planet, everything I had known disappeared. The stars outside, distant and cold, stretched out before me, and the ship, like an extension of the universe itself, glided effortlessly through space. The hum of the ship's engines melded with the thrum of my own heartbeat as the silence of the cosmos enveloped me. I was leaving Earth, leaving everything I had ever known behind. I stood there, frozen, unable to form any coherent thought. I wasn't just leaving behind the city or my apartment, I was leaving behind my entire life. Everything that had ever been familiar was fading into nothingness as the ship carried me forward into the unknown. My fate, as the sisters had said, was sealed. And with it came an overwhelming sense of awe and terror that washed over me like an unstoppable tide. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to be insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. I was no longer just a man from Earth. I was part of something far greater. But as much as the ship fascinated me, as much as I could feel the pull of whatever journey lay ahead, I couldn't stop the fear that gripped my chest. I was alone in a way I had never experienced before. Then, the second sister's voice broke through my thoughts once more. She was standing beside me now, her presence a quiet, comforting force. "It's all right, Augustus," she said, her tone gentle. "This is what you've always been meant for. You'll understand in time. Everything has been set in motion. There's no turning back now." The first sister, who had remained distant, finally stepped forward. She was taller than the second sister, her eyes a penetrating shade of violet, shimmering like distant stars. Her gaze was unyielding, and there was something commanding about her presence. She was like a queen, an ancient being who had seen centuries pass by without flinching. Her power, though subtle, was unmistakable. "You are a part of something now," she said, her voice carrying an undertone of finality. "We will teach you what you need to know. But make no mistake, Augustus, you are the one who will carry the weight of this journey. You are the one who will unlock the true potential of the Nazareth." I wanted to speak, to ask questions, to understand how my life had spiraled into this moment, but no words came. Instead, the ship began to move once more, the soft hum of its engines amplifying as it traversed the vastness of space, the stars stretching out before me like a living canvas, ready to be explored. My fate was no longer in my hands. It was in theirs. I couldn't fathom what was happening, and yet I knew one thing for certain. Everything I had ever known was gone, and I was no longer just a bystander. I was a part of something much larger than myself. Chapter 2. The Path Unfolds. The days that followed felt like a blur. I spent most of my time in the ship's central chamber, alone, with nothing but my thoughts to keep me company. The sisters had shown me around the Nazareth, though it was clear they weren't eager to answer my questions. They were focused, efficient, and every word they spoke was laced with an unspoken gravity that made it impossible to ignore. They had given me no choice but to accept my new reality. My role was already set, even though I had no idea what that role truly entailed. The ship itself was a marvel. It wasn't just a starship, it was a living entity, its walls and surfaces shifting as if it were breathing. Every room I explored had a unique atmosphere, a distinct feel. Some rooms felt warm and welcoming, with soft, pulsing light, while others were dark, cold, and almost claustrophobic, as though they were holding something back, keeping secrets buried beneath layers of time. The corridors seemed endless, stretching deep into the ship's bowels, twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. There were rooms that seemed to appear and disappear at will, as if the ship itself was guiding me toward something. I could never shake the feeling that it was watching me, that it knew me in a way I didn't understand. The sisters had explained very little. They told me that I had been chosen not just because of who I was, but because of what I was capable of. There was something within me, some dormant potential, that they believed could unlock the true power of the Nazareth. The ship, they told me, was not merely a vessel. It was a tool, an ancient artifact capable of feats that no human or any alien civilization had ever dreamed of. And I was the one who could unlock its secrets. They were careful with their words, always speaking in riddles, always offering just enough information to keep me intrigued, but never enough to fully understand. They told me that the Nazareth had been built long ago by a race of beings who had transcended the limitations of the physical world. The ship, they explained, was a product of their knowledge, their ability to manipulate space and time. It was no ordinary ship, it was a gateway, a bridge between worlds, a conduit for something much larger than just travel. But they had given me no answers, no clear path forward. They wanted me to discover it on my own, to tap into the power that lay dormant within the ship, within myself. The pressure was immense. And every day, as the ship glided through the stars, I felt the weight of the universe pressing down on me. The sisters had also mentioned a test. This test, they told me, would reveal my true potential. It was something I had to face alone, something I would have to endure if I were to truly understand the power of the Nazareth. They didn't say what it was, only that I would know when the time came. The days turned into weeks as we traveled through space, the ship moving at an unimaginable speed. I had no way of knowing how far we had gone, no sense of the passage of time. The stars outside the ship's viewports were the only markers, and even they began to blur into streaks of light, stretched and distorted by the ship's advanced propulsion systems. It was then that the ship began to change. The walls, which had once been smooth and featureless, now began to pulse with an almost rhythmic pattern. The ship was alive in a way I couldn't explain, its very existence tied to something beyond mere machinery. I could feel it in my bones, in the way the air shifted around me, the subtle hum of the ship's energy resonating deep within me. I was standing in one of the ship's observation rooms when the change occurred. The walls before me rippled, and the space outside the window began to warp. It wasn't just space bending, it was time itself. The stars twisted and folded, spiraling inward as the ship entered some kind of fold in the fabric of reality. My stomach lurched as I was thrown forward, the room spinning around me. It was then that I realized whatever the sisters had brought me here to do, whatever my role was, it was happening. I was no longer just an observer. I was part of something far greater. The sisters appeared beside me, their faces solemn as they watched the scene unfold before us. "It begins now," the first sister said, her voice calm, yet full of purpose. "You have stepped into the unknown. Your fate is sealed, Augustus. You will unlock the secrets of the Nazareth." The ship surged forward, and I felt my body lurch as we moved faster than I had ever imagined. This was it, the test had begun. I had no choice but to embrace it. The ship surged forward, breaking through the fabric of space, and I felt my heart race as everything around me shifted. The stars, once distant and steady, began to stretch and warp, pulling apart as if the very laws of physics were unraveling in real time. The sensation was indescribable, a feeling of being both everywhere and nowhere at once, as if time itself had lost all meaning. The walls of the ship pulsed with a soft, almost rhythmic hum, a vibration that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. I was acutely aware of my own body, but also of the ship around me, as if it were an extension of myself, its every movement and shift in sync with my thoughts. The sisters, standing beside me, seemed unaffected by the surreal changes occurring in front of us. Their expressions were calm, even serene, as they looked out into the distorted expanse of space. The first sister, who had been the more commanding of the two, turned to me with a quiet smile, though there was no warmth in her gaze, only an intense focus. "Do not fear this, Augustus," she said softly, her voice cutting through the chaos outside. "This is the first step. The ship is guiding you now. The test has already begun." I opened my mouth to ask what she meant, but before the words could form, the second sister, whose eyes had always held an air of quiet wisdom, stepped forward, her voice more gentle than her sister's. "You've already done the hardest part by stepping into this ship, by accepting the truth of your fate. The rest will unfold, piece by piece. But you must trust in the journey. You must trust in the Nazareth." The ship continued its journey, its motion impossibly smooth despite the madness unfolding outside the windows. The stars around us stretched and twisted, becoming elongated streaks of light that bled into one another, like paint mixing on a canvas. It felt as if we were traveling through the very fabric of reality itself, not bound by the traditional rules of space and time. I had no idea where we were going, only that the ship, the sisters, and whatever strange force I had now become a part of had already decided that my journey was set. My thoughts raced, questions flooding my mind, but I couldn't keep up with them. I had to let go of the impulse to understand everything right away. I had been thrown into this situation without preparation, without even the basic knowledge of what I was supposed to do. The sisters had made it clear this was not a choice. I had been chosen for something, and now, it was time to face whatever came next. I stood there, frozen, as the ship's path began to shift once more. The stars that had been stretching out before us suddenly contracted, as if we were being drawn into a singularity. I felt the pressure build inside my chest, a sensation like being pulled by an invisible force. The walls of the ship seemed to pulse faster, the hum growing louder, until it reached a crescendo, vibrating through the very air around us. I stumbled slightly, caught off guard by the sensation, but the sisters remained unshaken. They had undoubtedly experienced this many times before. "Hold on," the second sister whispered, almost as if speaking to herself. "The ship is ready." And then, just as quickly as it had started, the world around us began to calm. The wild stretching of the stars slowed, the ship's hum softened, and the pressure lifted from my chest. I blinked, trying to make sense of the shift, and found that we were no longer in the vast expanse of space. The stars, now appearing normal again, hung still outside the window. We had arrived. I didn't know where here was, but it was clear that the Nazarath had taken us somewhere beyond what I could comprehend. The air felt different here, heavier in a way, as if the very atmosphere itself was charged with power. The walls of the ship seemed to glow brighter now, casting soft lights over the chamber. The hum had evolved into a quiet, steady pulse, like the heartbeat of the ship itself. The first sister turned to me, her violet eyes sharp. "You're here now? This is the place where you will begin to understand your role." I opened my mouth, but before I could ask, the second sister raised a hand, silencing me with a single gesture. "This place is where the ship's true purpose lies," she said. "It is not a simple vessel. It is a key to unlocking something that has been hidden for eons. The knowledge of the universe, the power that transcends time, is waiting for you." I didn't fully understand what she was saying. The weight of the moment was too heavy to grasp. This wasn't just about the ship, it was about something much bigger, something that could change everything. I was here, not just as a passenger, but as a pivotal part of something far beyond my comprehension. I felt the urge to speak, to ask what my purpose was, but the words felt inadequate. I had no frame of reference for what I was about to experience. "Prepare yourself," the first sister said, her tone now more serious than ever. "What happens next will reveal the truth of your destiny. You are the one who will unlock the ship's potential, but you must be ready for what that entails." The ship came to a slow stop, and I could feel the atmosphere around me shift once more. This was at the moment I had been preparing for, though I had no idea what I was about to face. My heart pounded in my chest as I braced myself for whatever lay ahead. Chapter 3: The Trial of the Mind. The room around us, once bathed in the soft glow of the ship's inner lights, slowly began to change. The walls, which had been seamless, now split apart, revealing a vast expanse beyond them. It wasn't the vacuum of space I expected, but rather a darkened realm filled with swirling nebulae, distant stars, and faint glimpses of strange landscapes that shifted and flickered like the shifting of a dream. It was as if the ship had opened a portal to an entirely different reality, a place outside of time and space. I stood there, my breath caught in my throat, staring into the unknown, but the sisters were unmoved, as if they had seen this all before. "You must walk through it, Augustus," the first sister said, her voice carrying an edge of command. "This is the trial. You will face your fears, your doubts, and you will have to confront what lies hidden inside you. Only by understanding yourself will you be able to harness the true power of the Nazarath." I looked at her, at the second sister, but neither of them showed any sign of hesitation. They were beyond this trial, beyond the unknowns that awaited me. This was my journey, and mine alone. Without another word, I stepped forward, feeling the pull of the unknown guiding me. As I crossed the threshold, the world around me seemed to ripple, and I was plunged into an endless black void. The stars that had filled the space outside the ship faded, leaving me in complete darkness. I tried to move, but the weight of the air seemed to press against me, holding me in place. The first sensation I felt was cold, a biting, piercing cold that numbed my limbs and made it difficult to breathe. I stumbled forward, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of my surroundings. The ship was gone, and I was alone in the dark. My thoughts spiraled what had just happened. Where was I? What was I supposed to do? Then, a voice broke through the silence. It was my own voice, but it sounded different, distorted, twisted by some force that I couldn't comprehend. "Why are you here?" the voice asked, echoing through the void. "What do you seek? What do you desire?" I gasped, panic rising in my chest. "I don't know. I don't understand. What is this?" The voice laughed, a hollow, empty sound. "Of course you don't understand. You never have. You are nothing more than a pawn, a vessel for something greater. Your purpose was never yours to decide. The words hit me like a physical blow. I fell to my knees, my mind reeling. This was a trial, yes, but it felt like an assault. The truth of my existence, the weight of everything I had ever believed, began to crumble around me. The ship had chosen me for something, but what was it? Why was I here? What did it all mean? The doubts that had always lingered at the back of my mind, the uncertainty of my place in the universe, began to consume me. I was nobody, just a man from a quiet life, thrust into something far beyond my understanding. I wasn't ready. I wasn't worthy. The darkness around me deepened, and I could feel myself sinking into despair. But then, something shifted. A light, faint at first, began to glow at the edges of the void. It grew brighter, piercing through the darkness. It was like a thread of hope, pulling me forward. I didn't know what it was or where it had come from, but it felt like the first breath of air after being submerged in water. I reached toward it, my hand trembling as I reached out, as if this small light was the only thing keeping me anchored. The voice from the void spoke again, but this time it was different. There was no mockery, no disdain, only a quiet, knowing tone. "You've taken the first step," the voice said. "You've confronted your doubt. Now, you must find your purpose. Only then will you be ready." And with those words, the darkness began to fade, replaced by the swirling, cosmic light of the ship's reality. The landscape around me shifted, and I was no longer alone. The sisters appeared once more, their eyes filled with understanding, though there was no sympathy in them. This was my journey, and they were only here to guide me, not to save me. "Now you know," the second sister said softly. "Now you are ready to understand what comes next." I looked at them, still reeling from the experience, but something had changed inside me. I wasn't the same man I had been when I first stepped onto the Nazareth. The doubts were still there, but they no longer had a hold on me. I had taken the first step into understanding the power that had been waiting for me. And now, the true journey was about to begin. I stood still for a moment, processing the overwhelming shift that had just occurred. The darkness that had enveloped me felt like a distant memory now, fading into the background of what I had just endured. The sisters, still standing before me, regarded me silently, their expressions unreadable, yet I could feel the weight of their gaze, as if they were measuring every thought, every moment of this experience. They knew exactly what I had gone through. They knew that the trial had been necessary, a rite of passage I could never have anticipated. The second sister, who had been quieter than her sibling, stepped forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't a gesture of comfort, more of an acknowledgement of my growth. I could feel the power in her touch, not physical strength, but something deeper in energy that seemed to flow between us, connecting me to something far greater than I had ever known. "You've confronted your fear, your doubt," she said, her voice softer now, filled with a quiet reverence. "But this is only the beginning, Augustus. The trial was not meant to break you, but to shape you, to prepare you for what lies ahead." I felt the weight of her words settle over me like a blanket. I had been so consumed with my own uncertainty, my own fear, that I hadn't seen the truth behind the trial. It hadn't been about understanding the mechanics of the ship or mastering the technology that powered it. It had been about understanding myself, confronting the self-doubt that had always held me back. The Nazareth was not just a ship. It was a tool that could only be used by someone who had come to terms with who they were, with their place in the universe. "We've come to show you the path forward." The first sister spoke now, her voice filled with a kind of ancient authority. "This ship is a conduit to greater power, to the forgotten knowledge of the universe. But to unlock that power, you must learn. You must embrace your purpose." I nodded, though the weight of her words pressed down on me, heavier than anything I had ever felt before. There was no turning back now. I had crossed a threshold, and now, there was only one direction to move: forward. The walls around us began to shift again, the space warping and twisting as if the ship itself was adjusting to our presence. The soft glow of the room intensified, and a holographic projection began to form in the center, depicting a vast, sprawling map of the stars, of galaxies and constellations, some of which I recognized, but most were foreign to me. The map seemed to pulse with life, shifting as though it were alive. "This is where your journey begins," the second sister said, her eyes fixed on the map. "This is the galaxy as it exists now, but it's only a fraction of the picture. The Nazareth can take you beyond the known, beyond the stars you know, to places that were once thought to be unreachable. But there is more to this ship, Augustus. than you can possibly understand right now. I stared at the map, my mind racing. It was as if the very fabric of space had been laid out before me, but it wasn't just a map, it was a puzzle, a living, breathing representation of everything the ship could do. I could sense its power, the way it hummed with energy, waiting for me to tap into it. But the path was unclear. Where did I even begin? You will start where it all began. The first sister's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. You must understand the origin of the Nazarath, where it came from and why it was created. The knowledge you seek lies in the heart of the galaxy, in a place long forgotten by the rest of the universe. I looked at the map again, my eyes tracing the glowing lines that snaked across the stars. A small, pulsing star system appeared in the center of the projection, its name flashing briefly in alien symbols. I had never heard of it before. The place we must go is called Narethus, the second sister explained, her tone now almost reverent. It is the birthplace of the Nazarath, where the ancient beings who created this ship first unlocked the power that you are now connected to. The secrets of the ship are there, buried beneath layers of time and dust. And you, Augustus, are the key to unlocking them. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had been chosen for something far greater than I could have imagined, not just to fix the Nazarath, but to uncover the mysteries that had been hidden for eons. The galaxy, with all its untold histories and secrets, was now my responsibility. The ship will take us there, the first sister continued, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my chest tighten. But you must be prepared for what lies ahead. Narethus is a place of immense power, but it is also a place of danger. The knowledge hidden there is not for the faint of heart. It will challenge everything you think you know. I swallowed hard, but I couldn't bring myself to turn away. I knew that this was my path now, my destiny. There was no going back. Chapter 4. The Awakening. The days that followed felt like a blur, each one melding into the next as the Nazarath sped toward the distant star system of Narethus. Time seemed irrelevant now. There was no clock, no calendar, only the steady pulse of the ship and the hum of its engines, a constant reminder that I was no longer a part of the ordinary world I had once known. The sisters rarely spoke, except when necessary, each of them seemingly lost in their own thoughts as we traveled deeper into the unknown. The deeper we traveled into space, the more I felt the ship's power beginning to course through me. It was subtle at first, like a faint electrical charge in the air, but soon it became impossible to ignore. The ship was more than just a machine. It was a living entity, and its energy began to feel like an extension of my own thoughts. It was as if the ship and I were becoming one, our destinies intertwined in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we arrived. The distant star system that had once been a mere dot on the map now loomed before us, its planets and moons appearing as real and solid as anything I had ever seen. In the center of it all was a massive, ancient planet, its surface dark and scarred, with deep canyons and towering mountain ranges stretching across its vast expanse. The ship slowed as we approached, the energy within it vibrating with anticipation. "This is it," the second sister said, her voice filled with a sense of awe. "The heart of the galaxy. The place where everything began." The Nazarath descended toward the planet's surface, its tendrils of energy reaching out to interact with the planet itself. I could feel the pull, like gravity itself was urging me to step forward, to take the next step. We landed with a soft thud, the ship's hull settling gently against the planet's surface. The air was thick with the scent of something ancient, a smell of earth and stone and history. The ship's doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing a darkened landscape, bathed in the faint light of distant stars. The ground beneath our feet was rocky, uneven, as if it had not been touched in millennia. The sisters stepped out first, moving with a grace that seemed otherworldly, their eyes scanning the surroundings. I followed hesitantly, feeling the weight of what was happening settling over me like a blanket. This was the place where everything had begun, the origin of the Nazarath, the heart of the power I had inherited. This was where I would uncover the truth. The landscape ahead was eerily quiet, with no signs of life or activity. But as we walked, I felt a strange pull in the air, an energy that seemed to draw me forward, beckoning me to uncover the secrets buried here. The deeper we ventured into the planet's surface, the more the air grew thick with power, as if the very planet itself were alive, waiting to reveal its truths. We finally arrived at a massive structure, half buried beneath the surface, its walls etched with alien symbols. The structure seemed to hum with an ancient energy, the very air around it charged with a power that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The sisters stood before it, their eyes filled with reverence. "This is it," the first sister said softly. "The heart of the Nazarath. The knowledge of the universe lies within. It is time for you to claim your place." I stepped forward, my hand trembling as I reached out to touch the surface of the structure. As soon as my fingers made contact, the ship hummed in response, its energy coursing through me in a surge that nearly knocked me off my feet. The walls of the structure began to shift, revealing a doorway, and as it opened, a flood of knowledge washed over me. I could see the history of the galaxy, of the beings who had created the Nazarath, of the ancient power that lay dormant within it. And in that moment, I understood. I understood why I had been chosen, why I had inherited the ship, and why my fate had been sealed. This was my legacy. This was my purpose. As the door opened before me, I knew that I was ready. Ready to embrace the power, to understand the secrets that had been hidden for so long. Ready to unlock the full potential of the Nazarath. The journey had just begun,